The GSU Board of Trustees Human Resources Committee to order. Penny, would please call the roll?
Trustee Ceballos Candell. Trustee Harrell.
Here.
Trustee Kadar.
Here. Thank you. We have a quorum for today's meeting. I would like to acknowledge the two faculty senate representatives to this committee, Chelsea Vanderpool and Ahmed Khan. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Okay, first on our agenda today is public comment period, consistent with Public Act 91-0715 and reasonable constraints determined by the Board of Trustees. At each regular or special meeting of the board or its committees that is open to the public, members of the public may request a brief time on the approved agenda of the meeting to address the board on relevant matters within its jurisdiction. A reminder that commenters will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Are there any requests for public comment today? Hearing none, seeing none. Thank you. All right, committee members, you have the meeting agenda before you. Before I ask for a motion to approve the agenda, I would like to amend the agenda to remove action item number 4 as moot. May I have a motion to approve today's amended meeting agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda meeting minutes as, as presented.
Thank you. I will second that motion. Any discussion? Okay. Penny, please call the roll.
Trustee Harrell.
Yes.
Trustee Kadar.
Yes. Okay, the amended February 25th, 2022 Human Resources Committee meeting agenda has been approved. Okay, minutes. We have 4 sets of minutes to approve today. May I have a motion to approve the open and closed session meeting minutes of the November 17th, 2021 and the December 2nd, 2021 Human Resources Committee meeting
For the open and closed, correct?
for open and
Okay.
closed.
Thank you. I make a motion to accept the minutes from the open and closed session, meetings from November 17th, 2021 and December 2nd, 2021.
Okay, I will second that motion. Any discussion? Assuming none, hearing none, Penny, please call the roll.
Trustee Harrell.
Yes.
Trustee Kadar.
Yes. Thank you. The open and closed session meetings of November 17th and December 2nd, 2021 minutes have been approved. Pardon me. All right, we have 4 information items for today. We move to them right now. The first is a hiring update by Mr. Josh Allen. Mr. Allen, please present your report.
Good morning, Chair Kaderis, Trustee Harrell, President Green, colleagues, and those viewing in. So our provost search is just about to be filled. Dr. Beverly Schneller will join us on March 16th of this year. We've been in communication with Dr. Schneller, and she's really excited to start here at GSU. Our Dean of Library Services was recently filled with an interim dean position. Dr. Dennis Swanson joined us roughly 2 weeks ago on the 16th. Dennis comes to us from the Registry Consulting Services. Previously, he held the role of dean at the University of North Carolina, Pembroke. So he comes to us with a vast experience in library services. For student affairs, we will be reconstituting the position of Vice President of Student Affairs and Enrollment Management. And we are proud and happy to say an offer has been made to Mr. Paul McGinnis, in which he accepted.
It's hard to see with masks.
So we're really excited to have Paul on board, and really excited to see an internal promotion for Paul. So congratulations, Paul.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Outstanding.
And then for the interim dean of the College Arts and Sciences, an offer has been made for the interim dean position, and we are waiting on the further process of that offer to take place.
Okay.
Pending any of your questions, that is all I have in regards to update of senior personnel.
I just have one, I'm sorry. Any questions? I just have one question regarding the registry employee. He is considered a full-time regular employee. No interim attached to it. He is on board.
Correct. He is a full-time consultant in our system.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Okay. Does that conclude your presentation, Josh?
I actually still.
Yeah, yes, it does for the senior personnel update.
Just, the registry, we've now had a couple of interactions with that. I just want to make sure I understand this too. The fees associated if we, transition him over to full-time outside the registry, can you just kind of walk me through a little bit of, yes, he's a registry, but he's full-time, and if that and when that changes, and anything that we need to be aware of as a board?
Correct. He is a consultant through the registry right now. So in our system, he is not an employee of GSU. He is acting as a consultant for GSU in that situation. If the time comes when, or if we decide, he's working out and then we would want something more permanent, that'd be something we would have to enter into negotiations with the registry. Currently, there is no construct in the contract for that position to be, for lack of better words, bought out for him to become an employee.
So there's nothing there right now?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
No, that's it, thank you.
Good. Thank you, Josh. Now, will you please present your update on the professional development initiative?
Absolutely. And this is something I am really excited about. So first of all, the program is SEEDS. So that is Securing Excellence Through Employee Development and Support. This is consistent with Dr. Green's vision to provide professional and employee development to our team here at GSU. Also, this answers some of our civil service Senate concerns that they have addressed, seeking more development for the employees here at GSU. So I'm really excited that we can provide both of those to our team here. Before I get into the program, I want to thank the hard work on this initiative to Sandra Marak and Christina Houston. They have put tremendous hours in on this program in developing it, and I just want to provide them with that level of thanks from me to you guys. So the program in general offers eligibility to any employee who is a permanent full-time 50% or more. They have to be in good standing here at GSU, so that is a good performance review. No type of performance improvement program that we're on to voluntarily utilize this resource. Employees must have satisfied their probationary period, whether that's 6 months or 12 months. And then they can start to utilize the SEEDS program. As of right now, this program is in its infant stages. So the initial utilization for an employee is up to $2,500 or 2 courses that they can use through our School of Extended Learning here at GSU. So those 2 courses cannot exceed 2,500 cap either. So if you take one for 1,500, if you want to take that second course, it has to be under that $1,000 threshold. Courses that they take and are supported by GSU have to be work-related and support their current job performance or career track. So one thing our training and development team is looking at with the SEEDS program is to provide examples of those training tracks that an employee could take, whether it's in accounting, human resources, business, depending on what their job field is, just to make it a little bit easier for them to say, hey, I can go take course X, Y, and Z. So Christina Houston will be working on our training and development team to get this program marketed and rolled out to our team as soon as feasible. And then again, this is the first part of multiple initiatives that we plan to roll out in the next couple of years for our professional development of our employees. So again, I'm really excited about it. I think it's much needed, much wanted here, and we will track the utilization rates so we can tailor the program as we move forward. So pending any questions, that concludes the overview on SEEDS.
Just a couple. One is
No, please.
I apologize. One is a comment and one is a question. The comment is awesome. Just because, we're in this place where we're calling it the Great Resignation, and it really is not. It's really the Great Shift. People are moving to different places, and we know that engagement means a lot.
Absolutely.
And I think organizations underutilize professional development as a retention and engagement tool. People want to learn and grow. So thank you for doing that. I'm excited about the program. Just a couple of questions around the metrics that you're trying. Do you have any anticipated goals for participation that you're trying to look to reach the first year, second year out?
So right now, our utilization rate through the School of Extended Learning is at roughly 10% for GSU employees.
Okay,
We would like for the rest of the fiscal year to market this program, see what our initial interest is in the program, and for FY23, set sustainable, actionable goals that we can strive to meet.
all right, so you're not saying those now. Okay, awesome. And then, do you just track anything around correlation between participation and engagement, participation and retention, promotions? And are you going to be looking at that as a dashboard for HR at all?
Yes, we will be. This will play into our total benefits package that we offer employees, we recruit to employees. And then when we talk about employees during a stay interview, that's something we are going to talk with them about. Hey, did you know we have the SEEDS program available? Have you utilized SEEDS? And we'll seek feedback from employees that have taken the courses to tailor our approach on SEEDS as well.
And I just love that you just said stay interview. I'm not even sure people, if you engage in most organizations do exit interviews, so you don't find out really great stuff until people leave, and you're like, well, shoot, that would have been nice to know. So I love that this is awesome.
Yeah, we're really excited about it. So,
Another reason why I just love being on board for GSU.
all right.
Go Jaguar. Okay. Thank you.
Just one question of clarification. So SEEDS is the program for internal employees to participate for extended learning. Is it administered through the School of Extended Learning? I see Extended School, SXL with the SEEDS program. Is SXL administering it? Or how's that functioning?
Yes, the courses are available through SXL. So our employees will have the link on our HR page, how to sign up for it with supervisor approval, but the School of Extended Learning will be administering the courses.
Okay, so SXL is any other students can participate also in schools, okay? I thought that was the case, because you got a statement here says 10% of SXL's current students are GSU staff and faculty. And what you just said was about 10% of GSU staff is participating in it now, so I was just wondering how the interrelationship is.
Yeah,
so.
they're currently using the School of Extended Learning, but now with us offering this waiver for courses, we're wanting to set some realistic goals once we see what that participation looks at, once we market it and roll it out. But we'd like to see double, triple that number, right? But then once July 1st comes around, we'll have a better understanding of the hunger for the professional development.
Go ahead. Please.
Oh, one more question. It's just board head on fiscal responsibility. And I probably haven't looked at this line item, but if $2,500 per person in utilization rates, the budget that we have for, goodness gracious, I don't know if it's employee development. I don't know. I wonder what line item, and do you expect that will exponentially grow? And is it within the current budget right now, or is it, okay, we just got to kind of wait and see?
It is within the current budget right now.
Yeah, we're initially investing about $100,000 for this first
Okay.
go round for the program. I think by going through the School of Extended Learning,
Mhm.
this will allow them to develop their capacity. And so this program can be offered to other university employees and so forth. So this program can really grow for the university as a whole, right? Professional development across higher education, well, at least in the Chicagoland area.
Wonderful. Okay. Thank you.
We like I love the idea. I love the whole program stuff too. So we really hope it takes off. But if it doesn't, that's the wrong way to phrase it. As it develops, just give us a heads up what you've seen your participation rates are, because we like to be sensitive that if it's a matter of encouraging or advertising it or whatever. Because I think this is something that by in general the general employees and stuff just should jump onto. I think this addresses a lot of concerns that we kind of heard rumblings of over the years anyway. So I'm very, very optimistic that this will go well and continue to build. So thank you very much for your efforts. I think they're very well founded.
Excuse me, Chair, Kaderis.
Sorry.
So one thing, and Josh may be getting to this, but one thing that has been a key point of President Green's is to make sure that we have a more robust review process every year.
Right.
So Josh has been working with Sandra and Christina to revamp our review process. And I anticipate that when we talk about what is your individual employee's growth for the next year, this is going to be a primary tool to say, and this is one tool to help you achieve your objectives for next year. So it won't just be a mass email saying, maybe you can sign up for a class. What I hope is this will be tied closely to our review and development process as a whole, so things start to integrate.
Understood. Excellent. Dr. Green, please.
Good morning. I also wanted to make sure that the record reflected that Christina Houston's position and responsibility that she has now is an internal promotion, and her new title is Associate Director of Talent Development. So we created that position in the spirit of achieving the goal around staff development and training. That was a part of my presidential vision for GSU. So we are, advancing activity towards that specific goal. But it's worth announcing that that was a promotion, and it's a special responsibility that we've given focus to within the HR department. And as Dr. Bradford said, we have been investing money from the university in the advancement of the employees, particularly the staff.
Can't think of a better way to invest some money into. Excellent.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Other questions? Okay. Thank you, Josh, for all the presentations. Our third information item is a compliance, our regular compliance issues. Ms. Wild, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Trustee Kadaris, Trustee Harrell, and colleagues. I wrote and submitted a written report. It is at pages 13 and 14 of the trustees version of today's board book, and pages 12 and 13 of the publicly distributed board book. At this time, I have no additions to what I've written, so I'm happy to either go over it or simply answer questions.
Comment only, just publicly thanking you, Caitlin. Technology works as technology works, and there was a snafu and even us having to complete our training, my training, and they went above and beyond to ensure that I had it hard copy. I underlined and everything else to be able to get that back in. So I want to thank you for your diligence in just doing that and being mindful that it's the completion and the content that's most important. So thank you very much for that.
Yes, the numbers that I give with respect to the two trainings from 2021 that have finished, the ethics training and the harassment and discrimination prevention training, those are based on the numbers that we submitted to the state. However, we are still pushing employees who haven't yet taken the trainings to do so. So, that is something, those are still available, and we keep working with employees. Obviously, the state won't know that they took them because we don't keep reporting to the state. But as you said, it's the content that's most important. So making sure everyone takes it.
So that one statement and one question. The first, the statement is that the content was very rich, and it was, I don't want to say enjoyable to go to for compliance. I don't know if those two words fit in the same sentence, but but I didn't click through quickly. I mean, it was thought provoking, and I appreciated that. And I was thinking about, I got to figure out how to do that somewhere else. But that was the one question. The question is, my corporate hat, we have certain things that are provisions, and it's in there of your employment. You must complete an annual blah, 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 blah for provision of employment. What does that mean for employees who have not completed sexual harassment and or ethics training here at GSU at a certain time?
So we're really pushing people to just do it. I'll say that. And we would obviously, I'd wish that everyone would take it this week instead of having to move forward. Now, there is not, as of right now, a separate set of sanctions for employees. It's the general set of sanctions that are already out there for failure to abide by.
Disciplinary action up to and including blah, blah, blah. Okay. Is there, have you had any feedback about why people are not completing? Is it a technology issue, right? Is it a, I forgot? Is it a, I refuse to because I just don't agree? Is there any particular, have you looked at that right now?
Yes. For the ethics training, which came out first, you can see the number is much higher with respect to compliance there. For the most part, those numbers are the people who haven't taken it. The vast, vast majority are people who weren't still employees by the time the training rolled out in the fall semester. So, for example, adjunct faculty who taught in the spring were counted on our list of employees during the 2021 calendar year at GSU. However, if they weren't teaching during the fall, we sent out the information to them and tried to track them down, but they are not actually under our control when they're not teaching. So, it was great that many of them did still take the training and checked their personal emails when we reached out to them that way. So that was great. But for the really handful of people who didn't take that annual ethics training, most of them fell into that category, or were student workers who worked during spring semester, but once again, weren't working during the fall semester. Now, with respect to the harassment discrimination prevention training, unfortunately, a lot of feedback I got was, oh, I didn't notice this was a separate training.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't read the emails. So I did get a lot of feedback like, oh, I took the ethics training. And I sent back many, many emails saying, oh, this is a separate training. I will say going into next year, the trainings are going to be combined. So yay, everyone who takes ethics is going to have taken the harassment and discrimination prevention. But that is one of the biggest responses was, I saw the email, but I didn't realize you were talking about a separate training. And yes, we definitely had the, oh, I forgot responses, especially people who didn't take it when the training was first offered as the semester wore down and everyone got really busy right before the holidays. That's when the I forgot really seemed to be the response. But yeah, I think the reason the number for the harassment and discrimination prevention training is lower than the ethics is the, I didn't realize it was a second training.
The reading. Yeah. Can I ask one more question?
Please.
Just, and then the last question, I'm not sure if this is for you or Josh, but will this training be rolled into new employee onboarding? Because again, if they're off cycle for the annual, is this at all thought about part of the onboarding?
Yes, by law, both of these trainings have to be completed within 30 days. However, it's not specifically those two online trainings.
Oh,
We have
okay.
approved through the state a PDF because employees are required to take 2 sets of trainings the year they started. So when I started in 2021, I had to take the 2 paper trainings within 30 days of my hire, but then I also had to take the annual trainings. So a lot of stuff got covered twice, but that's the legal requirement. So Josh's team has rolled each year. We have the approved PDF trainings or paper trainings, but everyone reads them PDFs and resubmits their signed certificates that way. But yes, it's part of the onboarding package. I work with Christina Houston specifically to roll that out to all new employees throughout the year.
Awesome. Thank you.
So the vast majority, just to put a pin on that, who aren't taking it, are getting it anyway as new employees because they're either coming on board as new adjuncts or coming on board as students. So Caitlin has been working directly with all of the managers whenever there's an individual employee who hasn't taken it. So that's one form of follow-up is getting that warning from your manager that you haven't taken it. And she's also working at just making it more apparent and more accessible to the community, for example, by putting everything on Blackboard. So people aren't relying on one-off emails, but it's more apparent that this is the schedule for the year. So she's working on a lot of different initiatives to make it more user-friendly and so that it doesn't come as a surprise, like, oh, I have another training to take. So I think those are things that are really going to drive up responsiveness next year.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, get back to the compliance measure stuff. So for new people coming on board, it's gonna be 100% compliance, because that's the requirement of them onboarding. And for the existing people, we're fighting chasing down these little offsets. At what point does this, so presumably the state requires 100% for existing employee base as well as, new employee base, well, that's part of the existing base. Are you getting any comments back from the state that, hey, how come you're not at, you were 92, 93, 94%, I see that, and that's awesome. So at what point does it become a raised eyebrow from the state saying, hey, why aren't you at 100%? Or is that an issue, or is this something that every university is probably struggling with as they, go through all this compliance stuff also? What are your thoughts on that?
So I've never heard of the state reaching out, and it's actually all agencies under the executive branch. So that includes, the 9 universities, but also everything from the Department of Financial and Professional Regulation has to do these trainings. So there's a bit of public shaming involved. The failure to take the harassment and discrimination prevention training, those reports get published online. So we could all look up right now how U of I did with their numbers. I haven't, so I can't give you those numbers, but those are out there along with all the other executive branch agencies in the state. As far as my experience has been, once we give the names to the state itself can reach out to individuals and say, why didn't you take this? They have jurisdiction to fine individuals for violating the Ethics Act, and failure to take either of these trainings is a violation of the Ethics Act. But I've not heard of either the OEIG, the Office of the Executive General, or the Executive Ethics Commission talking to the employers. At least not for numbers, and with the numbers as high as we have, over 90%, I'm not worried that they're going to talk to us.
And I get that. I was just curious to see where we're at and what we anticipate might be any, not backlash, it's too strong a word, any comments back to us anyway. So, got one big broad question. It is, thank you for providing the reports in the way you do, because like I said, it helps us so much to keep track of all the stuff you're doing, and also being available for questions. I think that's the most effective way to get at, any particular issues we have. In your work, in your efforts, as you uncover other things and tackle other things, anything surprising you? Does the stuff come up that was unanticipated, or just taken in stride, or what are your feelings, just in a broad sense, just without anything specific? Is it going as you intended? Are there unanticipated things, or is this normal development, or what are your thoughts?
One of the things that I noticed that both pleases me and to a certain extent worries me is that many compliance issues are being fulfilled based on institutional personal knowledge. I'll realize that there isn't a policy, for example, covering the revolving door prohibition, but the university has been complying with it. They have submitted a list, but that seems to be more institutional knowledge that somebody knows that list is supposed to be submitted. So I'm so happy that we've been complying with that requirement. But there's the worry that if that magical person retires, then maybe we wouldn't have been complying without a set policy. So that has happened a few times. And also with the new employee background checks, which is another policy to be discussed later today. That was a practice that's come out in the last few years, but it wasn't a set policy. So sort of filling in those gaps. it was, great to see that those were being complied with. But when I first got here, I wasn't sure they were because there wasn't a policy. Obviously, very happy to find out that we are doing what we're supposed to be doing, but I am trying to fill in the gaps. That was probably the thing I noticed most that I wasn't expecting. I'm very happy to say that we were complying, but those policy gaps, trying to fill those in.
Okay, I appreciate that. I won't belabor the point, but just thank you for everything you're doing. So I can't imagine the intricate nature of everything, diving into peeling back the layers of the onion and stuff too. So good work. Thank you. Please continue. And just let this committee know how things are going, generally speaking. The formal reports are great. And also just chatting about it is perfect too. So thank you very kindly for that.
You're welcome. And yeah, it's my intention to make these reports quarterly. So every one of the 4 meetings here.
Cool.
This is the first of 4 for this calendar year and then moving forward.
Very good. Thank you very much. All right. Other comments, questions? Okay. Next, our fourth informational item, we turn to Vice President Nohos for a board bylaws update. Ms. Nohos.
Thank you, Trustee Kaderis. Good morning. This is an ongoing project that started when I joined the institution in November of 2020 at the request of the Governance and Nominations Committee. They had requested a full review of all existing board governing documents, including the bylaws. So at this last Governance and Nominations Committee, they asked for me to specifically highlight for the Human Resources Committee where they are, because there's been significant suggestions at the last meeting. So you'll see in your next board book a status of where we are. There's a memo that suggests here is each significant change I'm recommending to the bylaws. One of those changes or flags, if you will, is something to consider, is the board has a very high number of standing committees relative to the few number of members that you have on the board, right? You have to support 5 different committees with only 8 individuals. So that's a lot of work. And analyzing data from the AGB and other resources, our sister institutions, that's a lot of committees relative to our sister institutions in Illinois. And relative to AGB data of surveys of all public institutions, virtually none have a standing committee just on human resources. So that's something to consider. The Governance and Nominations Committee right now didn't feel like it was the time to do a complete overhaul of the committee structure because things are, going pretty well and we're still trying to adapt to a new board. But the fact that you have a lot of responsibility as human resources and then compliance also shoves into your area as well. It's sort of a sleeper issue because in part we didn't have a director of compliance before. So you may not have been hearing about compliance issues before. You may want to think about, does that belong here? Does that belong with the Governance and Nominations Committee? Does it dovetail with the audit work that the Budget and Finance Committee does? There's really no right or wrong answer to the question. It's just, where does it best belong? So you'll see more of that in the memo that will be in the full board book of what the significant changes are. But Trustee Sebastian thought it was important just to highlight for this committee that particular issue of does compliance belong here? If so, great, if you want to, because it's so important, or should it go to some other committee? And we don't have to do that via the bylaws. We could, what I've suggested doing is making the bylaws a little more generic about the standing committees, and then allowing the standing committees to write their own charters so that you can be more flexible about what you do and don't consider and who considers what. But the idea is just to, look at, historically, the way schools did it is they would look at the president's reporting lines and they'd match up committees that went with the reporting, right? So you have an HR committee because you had a VP of HR, and you have a finance committee because you have the CFO. Institutions are trying to get away from that to less looking at historical reports of what has happened and more future strategy questions. And so revising those committee structures might help you have more strategic discussions. just something to think about and something to be attuned to when you see that board book come out, of what role you want the HR committee to play going forward.
Are there particular recommendations, or what are you seeing from AGB as far as best practices on current or go forward committees?
So there,
I'm sorry, for how many, and then what are the types of?
yes. The average number of committees for public institutions across the United States, based on survey data, was 4.7 committees. But that doesn't answer the question of how many members have to staff those. So again, with only 8 members, 5 committees is a lot, right? And there was also.
We're used to it, I don't know.
Yeah, you guys are sort of gluttons for punishment, right? You take on all this work, which is, I mean, it's great, right? It's a labor of love. And there's also, you'll see in that board book, I included some data I'm looking up right now about what the most common types of committees there are. Again, human resources didn't make the top 10 list. The top one that virtually everyone has, 75% of the institutions have, and every one of our sister institutions has, is finance and budget, aside from the executive committee. So most people have the executive committee, most people have finance and budget. And then these other issues you can treat, again, you can make it as formal as you want. You can include it in the bylaws as we've done historically, or you can do it more flexibly by creating standing committees via policy. So the most common 5, finance and budget is number 1 with 75% of institutions having that. Audit is number 2 with nearly 60%. Academic affairs is the 3rd most common with over half of public institutions. And then student affairs and campus life, almost half have a standing committee devoted to that. So if this is something that you want to pursue, it would be a big undertaking. I think it would be beyond the bylaws, but I think it's a really constructive conversation to have, because the way your committees are structured drives a lot of your discussions, really, right? Like who's in the room and who's reporting and how is the agenda being set. So the AGB recommends to drive to more strategic discussions and get away from the rigid reporting line discussions. But that requires some thought and some work and some elbow grease. And we can either, you could overhaul and go to that type of process where you throw everything out and reevaluate, or we could just nibble around the edges and say, maybe compliance doesn't belong in human resources, but it belongs in governance, or maybe it's perfectly fine where it is. It's just the idea of teeing up these thoughts so that we're not mindlessly following what's now a 12-year-old practice.
Dr. Green?
I think this is a very important discussion, and I'm glad that we're having it. I have 2 comments. One is totally it's up to the board's decision and preference, but it might be feasible to focus on this at your next retreat, where you could spend a lot of time, delving into some of these questions. The other thing that I wanted to say, that this will be the first time people here are hearing this, because we're having this discussion, I would love to see the board entertain the idea of a student affairs or student life committee, because that is the reason that we are all here, for the students. And given the action that was taken today in terms of that being established as a VP, and given that there are so many layers to student experience, student life, student retention, student satisfaction, it could give a special focus to that population. Also, their scholarly achievement, so on and so forth. It would be up to the board in terms of what kinds of topics and themes and presentations they would be interested in. But I have had this thought for some time, but I didn't say anything. But now that we're having this discussion, I think it might be worthwhile for the board to consider a student affairs committee. At the same time, I don't want to add to the list of the number of committees, because Teresa is saying we have several, so it is totally up to the board how they want to entertain that or merge that. I mean, those topics are covered periodically through academic affairs, but I think it's worthy of a special focus. So.
Comment?
I love the discussion around student affairs because Trustee Sebastian's bringing up several times that when we have board meetings, talk about the students, what's happening with the students, and a lot of it, we get away from that, right? Because we're doing things around them. So, separate committee or whatever, like not adding more, but making sure that it's a highlight. One thing I do want to just put on for the record so we can talk about it, the number of committees and the heavy lift, okay, if we need to kind of look at how we're strategizing, but I want to be very mindful, and I continually bring this up, that human resources is typically has been left out of corporate and or institutional conversations separately until it becomes an issue. Your engagement and your focus on the most expensive line item you have, which is your talent, is a lead indicator and not a lag indicator about what's about to happen. When you look at turnover, when you look at engagement, when you look at internal promotions, when you look at whatever those things are, when we take our focus off of that and don't give that attention and time, later on we find that the Budget and Finance Committee has other things they need to deal with, or Audit has other things they need to deal with, because that part wasn't taken care of. Our people are the most important, our faculty and staff and our students. And so I just want to make sure, and I understand that it hasn't traditionally been the committee. I fight that battle all the time when we want to focus on strategy. What about your people is not a strategic conversation that you need to have. If you put it in a personnel function where it becomes tactical, that's the output you would get. So you have an excellent leader here that is bringing in, you've got compliance conversations that are being dealt with, not as just to check the box, but you're relating them to engagement and retention and hiring and all of these things. And I would just, for our board and for the committees, as we bring forth something, be it combined with something else, do not lose that focus. I've seen it go the other way way too many times. Okay, so that's just a comment.
Generally speaking, I think we were living with the structure we inherited. The board is very amenable and always open to, if there's a better way of doing it, let's explore it, because I don't think anyone's married to it has to be this way, because it's always been this way. It hasn't been the mindset of the board anyway. So I think it's absolutely worth, conversation, and there'll be a fair amount of interest with the board, make sure we're doing things, as effectively and efficiently as possible. From the board's perspective, in our current tenure out here, we've been focused on so many administrative, managerial oversight stuff. I mean, we all know that we're here without students, we got nothing. But with our limited time and resources, we've been directed towards dealing with the bigger, broader organizational issues and not paying more, don't have a lot of leftover time to dedicate to students directly. And I struggle with that all the time, because I'm thinking, we've got our hands full with all this stuff too, but we got to trust on the structure and the presidents and your staff and their programming and stuff to take care of students in the right way. So it's our job to oversee and be aware and stuff of that also, but have it included as part of board function is going to be another iteration of how we're going to continue to grow and mature as a board too. Not resistant to it at all. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying we've had our hands full with the nuts and bolts of oversight, which is what we're charged with doing. Acknowledging under every breath we take that this all exists for the students only. So silly distinction maybe makes in some certain circumstances, but this is got to be a sense of that we only have so many resources available to dedicate to the operational oversight stuff too. So anyway, but absolutely worth discussing. I think there will be a very open mind with the rest of the board as we move forward doing it at our retreat. I think that's a great idea too, to have some time to really dig into it. So
may I make another point? No problem with more consideration and a decision at some other point. I just want to offer another solution to the item about the students. If there is no committee that's formed because of, the minimum number of board members and all the other areas that they're currently tasked with focusing on, I think another way we might be able to address the request to have more focus on this area is to maybe put it on the agenda at particular times of the year for that to be a presentation.
Mhm.
That way you're still getting the information, the engagement. We're sharing what we feel you need to know, but it's not another set of tasks and meetings and so on and so forth in the form of another committee. So that could be another solution for you all to consider when you dive into this more.
I appreciate that,
No
Dr.
need to respond today, but just to give you another idea and strategy for how we can meet that goal.
Yeah, let me make it clear, I'm not resistant to this. It's just trying we got to balance everything, and we'll continue to grow and evolve. We'll continue to do so, whatever makes the most sense for us to further advances of the university. So, great point. So it might be something that we eventually end up doing, and we'll. Our minds are open to further discussion on it anyway. So,
Okay.
all right.
So just to
Please.
put a fine point on that, again, in the board book that comes out for March, you'll see that memo. And I know you always pay attention to, everything in the board book, but that's maybe just something to give a little extra attention to. And as part of that same project of updating the bylaws, we've also been looking at all of the board policies and procedures. And so just to give you a little context of what you're going to hear on the action items, the 3 different action items that Caitlin's going to present about the policies is an outgrowth of that same process we've been following. We've been looking at all of the HR policies, identifying gaps, and now we have a workflow of trying to prioritize, okay, here's 3 we can push through, here's 3 we can push through, so that we have a constant work stream. So that's a little bit of context around why you're seeing these particular 3 come up at this time, because they were identified as relatively high priority. So this is the second time she'll be pushing through a work stream of a set of policies. And while these are now up for public consideration, we're in the background working on the next set. So then at the next board meeting, you'll see another set come through.
Okay.
Just a little context around that.
That sounds like a segue if I ever heard one. So appreciate that. All right, so that'll conclude our discussion of the discussion items and move towards the action items right now. Then, as you said, we have a number of action items before us this morning. First is a recommendation that the Board of Trustees waive initial reading of and public proposed regulation regarding revolving door prohibition of the Illinois State Officials and Employees Act in advance of consideration and possible adoption by the Board of Trustees at the same at the June 10th, 2022 regular board meeting. So may I have a motion to waive the initial reading of the regulations?
I make a motion to waive the initial reading of the and published proposed regulations as stated.
I will second that motion. I don't think any voice vote is required, so Ms. Wiley, please present.
Good morning again. So as General Counsel Noho said, this is part of our ongoing project of reviewing the human resources policies, both those that exist and might need to be updated or revised, and those gaps that we have identified. First, I'd like to just clarify why the title of the resolution that Trustee Kaderis read was so long, and that is because per the regulations and how they get adopted, this set of meetings, so both this meeting and the upcoming full board meeting, is not the time at which this resolution, this proposed regulation and the next 2 that will be presented actually get enacted or adopted. Per the requirements for updating the regulations, any proposed new regulation has to be published and then allowed a period of public comment. So that is the purpose of this resolution, and the next 2 is to put 3 separate proposed regulations out there for public comment. So the resolution is so long because we wanted it to outline for everyone what exactly the process is. So if this and the next two resolutions are sent on to the board and then passed by the full board, the 3 proposed regulations will be posted on the MyGSU portal where comments can be left or comments can be sent directly to General Counsel Nohos. A mass email will be sent letting everyone know where on the MyGSU portal specifically, though it is under the policies page on MyGSU, but there'll be a helpful link to make it easier to find. Complete copies will also be sent to the 3 senates here, as well as to union leadership for the unions that represent campus employees. That way, the senates and the unions can also distribute policies, copies of the regulations, and then they can either discuss them formally or just allow their employees to make comments. But that is the formal process we're going through. So that's why the resolution is so long, is because the regulation needs to be specifically set up before it can be adopted.
Appreciate that.
With respect to this proposed regulation specifically, the revolving door prohibition, I want to confirm that the proposed regulation takes into account the law change that went into effect of January 1st of this year. It didn't really affect GSU. We didn't have to add anyone new to our C list or H list, but we did make sure that moving forward that there is language that covers the new changes so that if changes need to be made in the future because of that, they will be. And then the last thing I wanted to mention, which is in addition to the executive summary, is that we intend for this proposed regulation to allow for timely changes to the C list. That is why we included the specific provision that would give President Green the authority to update the C list based on what is happening at the university. And then reports would be made to the board, but we wouldn't have to wait for the formal board regulation revision process to formally update, because the state of Illinois expects more timely updates to the C list. And as you can see, by the time that the interim policy 87 was adopted, between now, the C list already had to be changed with the addition of Mr. Allen in a position that had not previously been included on the GSU org chart. And the version that is in your board book today will also need to be updated based on Mr. McGinnis's new position, a position that was not previously on the org chart. So while he personally is already on the C list in his current position, the list with the state needs to be updated to reflect his position so that when he retires and somebody else comes into the position, the state will already know that position and that new person will need to be added to the list.
That conclude your discussion?
Yes.
Yep.
Just, is there a particular material change in any of the language that because I'm not, 100% familiar with all of the law and the changes. I'm familiar with revolving door policy. So how we define those more senior positions that would be applicable to this hasn't really changed that I'm aware of. Is it just a matter of just adding any C-list employees as they come up, or I'm not sure about the specific changes that would impact us.
Sure. So the change to the H list that doesn't apply to us is that chiefs of staff
Okay.
were added to the H list in addition to trustees and presidents
Okay.
of the universities. We don't have a formal chief of staff, so we didn't need to change our H list. But if such a position was ever created, then yes, our H list would need to be updated. As for C list employees, the language of the law changed to say that those on the C list are those that participate personally and substantially in the award of state contracts or participate personally and substantially with the fiscal administration of state contracts. For us, those duties have really always overlapped, thanks to all the departments we have on campus. So positions that work on contracts are usually also the departments that work on administering the contracts. So in that respect, the change in language, review of the positions here on campus, we didn't add any positions to the C list for that reason.
Okay, thank you. No more questions. Thank you.
Generally speaking, just for benefit of the committee here, is I have read all the resolutions and had some questions and comments addressed also in a very efficient manner. So we're not blind just to having these put in front of us, but appreciate your explanation about when we request to waive the minutes, the reading of them, that it's still transparent process. The language is still available for anyone who wants to review the various measures and proposed resolutions. So thank you for that, because anytime I get a raised eyebrow, I'm going to be very sensitive. Make sure we don't make sure we address that, so there's no consideration for anything other than pure transparency. Okay, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, seeing none. The question on the floor is recommendation to waive the initial reading and publish proposed regulation regarding revolving door prohibitions of the Illinois State Officials and Employees Act. Penny, please call the roll.
Yes.
Trustee Kadar.
Aye. Okay, that resolution has been approved for recommendation to the full board.
Question,
Please.
for the staff. With the remaining two actions in this particular area are simply to approve the waiving of that, and with the wonderful, very extensive explanation about what we're doing, is it necessary that we go through immediately?
Well, we have to introduce the other two resolutions. I mean, the waiving is part of it, but also the resolution itself. You're suggesting just combine the last two and approving as one?
Just because of her explanation there about what they were and the fact that they have to be posted, the language is going to be there. I just didn't know from a process standpoint that we have to do them individually, or is it enough from a transparency standpoint that we understand what they were doing, that we've read through them and that the content will be posted. That's all of it.
Thoughts?
The process is exactly the same for the next two, so unless you have particular questions you want Caitlin to address, you can just move to pass number 3 and vote on it, and then move to pass on the next one and vote on it, and you don't have to hear the same presentation again, unless you have questions about those particular items.
Yeah, that was the question I was asking.
Okay. No, works for me.
Okay.
All right, so keep me on track here. So the action items regarding two measures, proposed regulations regarding drug-free workplace in advance of consideration and possible adoption of the Board of Trustees, and regarding pre-employment background checks in advance of consideration and possible adoption by the Board of Trustees at the June 10th, 2022 regular board meeting. So the request is, do we have a motion to approve both of those at this point?
I make a motion to waive the initial reading of the public and proposed regulation regarding the drug-free workplace policy and the pre-employment and background checks policy as stated.
I'll second that motion. Okay, any questions or comments?
Just for the record, you're moving to waive and publish.
Waive and publish, yes, thank you.
So the question on the floor is recommendation to waive the initial reading and published and public proposed regulation regarding pre-employment background checks and drug-free workplace for full for presentation to the full board at the June 10th, 2022 meeting. Anyway, please call the roll.
Trustee Harrell.
Yes.
Trustee Kadar.
Aye. Okay, the resolutions have been approved for recommendation to the full board in the June 10th meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wild. All right, before we consider today's remaining action item, I will entertain a motion to go into executive session. Please.
I make a motion to go into executive session.
Okay, for those in attendance, I anticipate we'll come out executive session. I always guess 30 minutes. Sometimes it usually goes longer than that, but for sake of scheduling, let's, 30, 45 minutes, which should be appropriate time period. So the live stream link will close, and you can join us again using the second link posted on the GSU Board of Trustees webpage when we return to open session. So I have a motion to move into executive session. I will second that motion. Penny, please call the roll.
Trustee Burrell?
Yes.
Trustee Cordero?
Yes. Process-wise, we staying here? What are we doing?
Just for the record, Trustee Kaderis, can
Yes.
I note that we are going into executive session under Section 2C1 to discuss personnel matters?
Thank you for that catch. You're absolutely right. We are. Thank you so much. Do we stay here? What do we do?
You can stay here.
We stay here.
We're going.
Dr. Green, Mr. Allen, join us, please.
What are you doing?
General Counsel. Yeah.